Okay, well, I've got 11 o'clock. Daryl, if it's okay with you, I think we'll get started. I know everybody's busy. I think Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth is on. I hope so. I continue to struggle with the virtual world and being able to see everybody, but there you are.
I'm on, Mary Pat. Good morning.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm great. I'm great. Well, if you can bear with us, I'm going to introduce you and give a little bit of your background and make some very flattering comments about you. So if you can endure that, then I will kick it off. But I just want to say welcome, everybody. This is the May meeting of the Birmingham Business Alliance Government Affairs Committee. We have a big crowd today, not surprisingly, because we have a very special guest, Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth. As I mentioned, I just want to say a few comments about his background. Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth has a background in business. He is the co-founder of Dream Ranch and the Tennessee Valley Hunting and Fishing Expo. He currently owns Ainsworth Real Estate and Ainsworth Homes, which specialize in residential real estate construction and development. And just a bit about his legislative background, he was elected to the House of Representatives in 2014. And while serving in that position, he was a champion for public education, supported pro-business measures, and was active on issues affecting agriculture and protecting family values. In 2018, he declared his candidacy for lieutenant governor and received the most votes of any candidate for constitutional office on the general election ballot. And as lieutenant governor, he established the Commission on a 21st Century Workforce. In that role, he has focused on improving workforce development. He's also committed to providing quality public education to Alabama's and Americans' school children. And he's a strong supporter of the first-class pre-K program. He's also on the Small Business Commission, and he's chairman of the Alabama Military Stability Commission. And that commission works to ensure that Alabama remains the most military and veteran-friendly state in the country. As part of that work, he received the Pete Taylor Award from the Department of Defense. And Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth is married. He has 3 children. And is a very, very busy person, I know, doing a lot of great work for the state of Alabama. So we are thrilled to have you with us here today, Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth. We've got a big crowd, as I say, and we may have some questions after your comments, if that's okay. But with that, I will turn it over to you. And thanks again for being with us.
Yeah, thanks, Mary Pat. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Great to be with you. We finished up session last night, right after midnight, and still in Montgomery today. We head back to Gunnersville this afternoon. First, want to say this: appreciate the Birmingham Business Alliance. Appreciate what you do for obviously Birmingham and our state. I know a lot of people on this call drive the train when it comes to vision and leadership, and we appreciate what you do. I'm excited about what's going on in Alabama. I want to kind of highlight since the session's over, some things we worked on, some issues we're going to work on going forward, and kind of just my vision for Alabama. First with the legislative session, we started off with 3 bills that were priorities of the House. Senate, our office, as well as the governor's. One was the business liability protection. That was an important issue for businesses, and we heard all during the pandemic. The governor had executive order that dealt with that. But we felt like we needed to make sure we got that codified. And that was one of the first things out of the gate we did to make sure we protected businesses, because we're dealing with, uncharted waters with the pandemic and potential to protect businesses from liability, as a business owner, we thought was important. Next, tax protection for federal stimulus dollars for individuals as well as businesses, we thought was important. Make sure that money actually went to people where they could be spent, it wasn't taxed, and that was important. Then when you look at just the incentives and the Growing Alabama Credit, Alabama Jobs Act, we're fortunate. Secretary Canfield does a good job, and governor's office took the lead, Governor Ivey, on this, and we were able to get that passed to make sure we continue to compete. And when you look at recruiting businesses, I think right now it's encouraging to me. Mary Pat had mentioned that we're in the home construction business as well as real estate. One of the things we're seeing is there's a lot of people moving to Alabama. I hate we're not doing the census again, because people are flocking to Alabama right now. I live in Gunnersville. I can tell you in Marshall County right now, our growth is out the roof. It's like something I haven't seen in my lifetime as far as people from outside the state moving here. And so I think when you look at that ties in with, why it was so important to make sure we had our incentives there. And just last night, there was kind of a last minute effort by someone to try to put something in to try to derail that. We got some stuff stopped. But I think when you look at incentives and the fact people are already moving here, and that we got to do whatever we can do to, because we're competing with other states for these companies, I think the future's bright on that aspect. One of the things that she mentioned is, 2 years ago, last year, we received the Pete Taylor Award, which is dealing with militaries. And under the wisdom of Governor Ivey in 2010, she started the Military Stability Commission and then also the foundation. And that's made up of retired and active generals. It's made up of different business leaders, made up of chambers, and huge honor to serve and kind of be the voice for the military families in the state. And want to share with y'all kind of what we found on that when we started diving in to the military issues and how we got graded by the Pentagon. It was actually pretty scary. When you look at Maxwell, which is home to Air Force University, where all our officers are trained in the Air Force. Look at the economic impact that has not only on our state, but especially in the river region here in Montgomery. It's huge. And we just looked at the grade. We were fourth from the bottom in the U.S. And that's just not acceptable. I like to win. I like to make sure we solve problems and fix things. And so we just went down. It's a simple system. They rate you on all kind of different levels, from education to a thing called license reciprocity for spouses to, in-state tuition, from education choices, all these different things, right? And it's rated, green's the best, and they've got yellow, then red, just simple red light color code system. And we just went line item by line item and had a package of bills to address every issue that we were yellow or red, with the idea that we were going to move our military bases to the top. And our vision and goal is to be the most military and veteran friendly state in the country. So what are some of those things that were issues that I think you can be excited about for our state going forward? Because not only is it going to impact Maxwell, but it's going to impact all our military bases. I think when you look at Space Command and the fact that's coming to Alabama, I'll talk about that in a minute, our involvement in aerospace. But, the future is so bright with defense and aerospace in Alabama, and we have a chance, or we're not a chance, we're already a national leader and a global leader in both of those. But first, we dealt with license reciprocity for spouses. We ran into a problem, and we had a lot of yellows or reds in license reciprocity, meaning that when a family moved here, their spouse couldn't go to work in whatever they were trained in. And so what other states have done and what we modeled is that if you're trained in equal or better education or standards, that you could go right into getting that job. And so we just went profession by profession and got legislation, entered into compacts with other states, or did license reciprocity bills to make sure we address that issue. Why does that matter? Look at military families. They depend on two incomes. It's so important. And so we wanted to make sure their spouses could get a job and where they're trained in. That was an area we were very deficient. Even if you look on our national ranking, when you looked at Space Command, which was based on merit, one of the 4 areas we got knocked on, one of them was license reciprocity. I can tell you now we've fixed about 80% of that, and next session we'll fix the other 20 to where we'll be a leader in the U.S. in license reciprocity for spouses. That was important. Another thing we did was a thing called a Heroes Welcome website. That's what we got for the Pete Taylor Award for, first in the nation to do that. One-stop shop for military families to go to find out, where do they go to get their license? What school is they zoned in? I mean, you name it, any question they'd have when they move to a new area, it's a one-stop shop for our military families. And, we felt that was important. Educational choices are tough for military families. And so we have public school choice. If you come to Montgomery, you're zoned for a failing school, meaning that if you're zoned for a failing school, you could go maybe to Pike Road, you could go to Prattville, but you have options. We worked with Alabama High School Athletic Association. I'm big into sports. Mary Pat mentioned I'm busy. My kids, I've got twin boys that are 11. We were in Atlanta this last weekend. We'll be playing baseball. They play basketball. They play football. My daughter does, travel, cheer competitions. And so we are wide open and fortunate to have a great wife and supportive. But I mean, we work and we go to a lot of sporting events, but it really bothered me that military families would move here and try to do what's best for their child and move them to another school. And then they had to sit out a year because of our transfer policy. We got that fixed with Alabama High School Athletic Association. That was another area that, we got a bad review on. One of the things I think that, when you look at, in-state tuition, another example, right? Families here, their child enrolls at Auburn, then that family gets reassigned to another base. we wanted to make sure they kept in-state tuition while they finished out, their college degree, and I felt that was important. One thing that I'll say I'm probably most excited about, and we have bipartisan support about this, and for those of y'all that have been involved in education, this right here ought to tell you, how far we've come. We have bipartisan support, unanimous support for a charter school bill in Montgomery, Alabama. All right, and the vision for this is to make this a aerospace/defense type charter school, and it is to use it as a draw to when people want to, as a recruiting tool, to Montgomery. We've been working with the chamber, we've been working with Montgomery Works, working with our education departments here. But imagine that when people are trying to come into Montgomery, deciding where to go, like, hey, not only, can you come here for Air Force University, but your child can go to one of the top, aerospace charter schools. And I think that's something that, is really exciting. It's got a lot of buzz, and we're excited about that. The other thing I'll say that we worked on the military is the whitewater facility that's going to be out by the base. And so one of the things we had another low ranking on was quality of life by the base. This is certainly going to help that. So these are all areas that we've been working hard on. Last week, we had the chief of staff from the Air Force, which is the number one that's not appointed, as far as rank, came down to Montgomery, had lunch with him. We talked through all these issues because we want to make sure he understands what we've done. Had General Hecker there, and then so that way that when they reassess, our goal is to be hopefully green in every category, and for Maxwell to move up from the bottom, hopefully to the middle or the top, and as well as other bases will benefit also. So that's the work on military bills we worked on. Another passion of mine is workforce development and getting people what we call job ready. 2 years ago, that was our office's number one priority. Before the pandemic, we hired economic leadership, a guy named Ted Abernathy, got a little bit of money from the ETF for that, plus had McKinsey, and they actually just got lucky on that. They agreed to help us for free. Someone was from Birmingham, from McKinsey as part of their group, and because there's no way we could have afforded them. And they agreed to help on this project. And what we wanted to look at was, and it's really the most comprehensive workforce plan that the states had, is, okay, how are we doing right now? What are areas we can improve? What are best practices in other states? What is the job forecast, not only today, but of the future? And how can we meet those demands? Because, and you'll know this from being from the business community, I've been in it my whole life, but I mean, the number one limiting factor to growth we hear over and over from businesses is people. Like, Will, if you can help us get more people trained, we can grow our business. And so that's why we wanted to tackle that issue and why we're working hard. I can tell you last year during the pandemic, didn't know what was going to happen with the budget. So a lot of our recommendations did not get implemented. This year, every recommendation we had from this report, which was over 156 pages, got implemented. I want to highlight a few of those just to talk about, why they're important and what we think, and there's a lot more work to do, but this is a good start. First is career coaches, $8 million to career coaches. We more than doubled career coaches in Alabama. People might say, why do career coaches matter? And it goes back to, my wife was a pre-K teacher. And when I decided to run for the House, I went and talked to all the different, levels of education. But one thing stood out to me, it ties in with this. I asked kindergarten teachers, what can I do to help you as a representative? And they said, Will, we need pre-K. And that stood out to me because, talk to other grades, it's, need more classroom supplies, need more, better pay, whatever they wanted to say. But kindergarten teachers were unanimous in my district that we need pre-K. And so I asked the question, why? And they said, parents aren't doing their job anymore. In a lot of instances, 30, 40% up where we live, probably higher in some areas. They said, kids are coming into kindergarten that have never been read to. They don't understand basic numbers. They don't understand, just what an A is. And they're so far behind, they can never catch up. And these are teachers that have taught 15, 25 years. And they said, this is a problem that's, been getting worse and worse and worse, but now it's almost a crisis. Well, pre-K helps because, those kids are getting a foundation they should get at home. Well, fast forward to those same kids when they're in high school now, their parents aren't telling them about the job opportunities out there. They're not telling them about, how you can, get a 21st century job. And so career coaches fill a void in our society that unfortunately parents aren't doing. And so they're going to sit down with the student and say, hey, what are you passionate about? What is your skill set? What do you want to do in life? Help them take tests to find aptitudes. And and then line them up and help them get to where they want to go. Maybe it's they go to a 4-year college, right? Like I did, and get my degree in marketing. Maybe they need to go to community college. Maybe it's, something through the high school programs that's available. But the goal is to get them on a track and help them. And you got to start this early. We found out you really got to start this in middle school to start getting kids to think. And that's one of the things we found out in our study. So $8 million for career coaches, more than doubles our career coaches in Alabama. That's important. $15 million for K-12 CTE, which is basically going to be getting trades back in our high schools. I think to when I was in high school at Boaz as a freshman, I got asked, how am I doing on my ACT? Where am I going to college? Well, it worked out great for me. Ended up going to college, but in Alabama, I want you to remember this number, 60%, all right, of the students in our state end up not graduating from a 2 or 4-year college, 60%. And so we've got to do a better job with that 60% of getting them trained for our workforce. And a lot of that STEM, and we've got to get them, we look at science, math, technology, and, making sure that we're doing a better job in high school. Well, what we found, a lot of high school programs have, gone away. A lot of high school programs are way outdated on technology. So 15 million for that, and expansion into middle school. Because again, we think we got to get to these students earlier. It can't just be a high school thing. And that's one of the things we found out in our project we put together. And the final thing on this that I'll highlight is we felt our community colleges are way behind on a lot of the technology they have all over the states. And I went and saw that firsthand myself. I've been to almost every community college. And so we had $25 million recommendation for our colleges to update technology. And we think that's going to pay off huge. When you look at, basically, whether it's up in North Alabama to South Alabama, it didn't matter, whether it's dealing with aerospace, whether it's nurses, whether it was training law enforcement, you can go on and on what some of these community colleges have, some of the, been there where they even do stuff with construction to a degree, but one thing that we saw is that there's a huge need for actually 2 parts on this. And we lined it up this way. One, to make sure they could actually go out and buy the equipment and get the resources they needed. But second, be able to have the flexibility to hire people that they normally couldn't hire because of the pay scale. And that's a big deal, especially in some of these trades. And the community colleges, that gives them the flexibility to do that. And we're working on that in K through 12. I'm national chair of the Aerospace States Association. They initially asked me to do that. When I got elected, I was like, I think you got the wrong guy. I was like, I've been, been involved in the railroad industry, can, certainly carry on the conversation, been involved in the outdoor industry, done real estate my whole life, and a lot of projects and developments. But I said, I don't, aerospace, not really my wheelhouse, but it's so important to Alabama, and, glad to serve as our state, but also national chair. And, we have real competitors in Colorado and Florida and other states like Alaska and Hawaii that are trying to get into that space. But, we're going to fight hard. Our goal is to be, and I actually think we are, the airspace leader, not only of the country, but the world. Space Command is going to be a huge economic driver here for 100+ years. I think when you look at, there's 350 plus aerospace companies in Alabama and suppliers. We're starting a pilot program in Marshall County that, we saw out in Colorado, as well as an internship program. One of the things, if I see another state doing something and they're doing it better than us, we're going to try to emulate that. And so that's a couple of things we picked up from Colorado. Thing we're doing in Marshall County tomorrow is going to be a program where Lockheed Martin, ULA, different companies are going to come in, and this is just a pilot program we're going to do in Marshall, then expand to the other counties after we kind of get it figured out. But to let, these companies interested in being suppliers learn, okay, what do you have to do to be a supplier? All right, do you want to try to go through all the qualifications? And so that's something we're doing tomorrow. We've got an internship program in aerospace. Tied in, it's going to be great. Have a ton of interest in high school and college kids, and that's going to be starting in July. And so those are things, that we're excited about. There's 65,000 plus jobs right now in Alabama in this, and we're one of the top 5 in the country for aerospace engineers. And so a lot of upside there. Love to go out selling our state. And I want to say this, we won Space Command, not because of President Trump, not because of Mo Brooks. We won it based on merit. And when you look at it, that's just a fact. We had 4 areas we were deficient. Our next closest competitor was Colorado, which had 10. And we've eliminated one of those. So now we only have 3 areas that, when they ranked us, that we had issues. So There's certainly a lot of things we can do to improve our state, but I just want to encourage you that on that issue, that was based on merit. So final thing I'll say is this. Probably one of the most rewarding things I worked on the last year was, I was talking with Governor Ivey and Joe Bonner during probably a year and a half, probably about a year and a few months ago. And, in the middle of the pandemic, everything had been shut down, and we're looking at how we're going to reopen the economy. And Joe Bonner was like, "Will, why don't you take that on?" I'm like, "Okay, great, thanks. That's gonna appreciate that, but we're glad to do it." So he's like, "You got the Small Business Commission, which Governor Ivey gave me because I've been involved in small business." And so I tapped Danny Garrett, one of the brightest numbers guys down here. He was Dad's CFO at Progress Rail, and so I got him to be, but we had an emergency small business commission. He was chair of that, and then we had a really good team, probably 100+ people, all from the business community, every sector. Katie Britt at BCA, good friend, was really involved and a huge help. And we just spent thousands of hours collectively together going through every segment and trying to understand, what can we do to safely reopen the economy? It became apparent that, we had to do that. And, we put together that plan and presented it. Governor and Dr. Harris implemented probably 95% of it, which was certainly rewarding. Other lieutenant governors I served with, requested that. There's some states that still haven't got anything implemented, but it's encouraging to me because we did that. We're in a good spot from a fiscal standpoint, and are there certainly still challenges with businesses getting people back to work because of all the free money out there from the feds? Absolutely. But because we were able to get, and we appreciate the business community, thank you for your ideas, for your suggestions. Certainly the best ideas on any of this stuff come from the people that are doing it day by day, but we did it and we got people back to work and we did it safely. And I'm certainly proud of that and was glad to be a small part of that. So Mayor Pat, certainly open up to any questions. That's kind of an overview of the session and what we worked on, and honored to serve as Lieutenant Governor. I look forward to running for re-election and helping our state continue to improve. So thank you.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth. Congrats on a very successful legislative session. Just a lot of exciting things happening right now, and in large part due to your leadership. So thank you. I did just want to comment on what you said at the beginning of your comments about business liability protection and reopening. I know that bill was passed a few months ago, but companies like Protective here in Birmingham, we're just now in the process of reopening. In fact, have a 3-phased approach to bringing people back. But having that bill in place and passed has been so helpful in helping us make that decision to get people back, because others may have found this. We're finding that some of the CDC guidance is inconsistent, and so while we're trying to do the right thing, it's just been so helpful and important to have that legislation passed in Alabama. So really just want to thank you for that on behalf of Protective and the business community. It was really a great effort. And even having that emergency order, in advance of the legislation was particularly helpful as well. So thanks again for your leadership on that. No question in particular, just a thank you.
Yeah.
But I know we've got a lot of faces out there. Does anyone have a question they want to ask? I've had some that came in advance, but if anybody wants to speak up and ask a question, feel free. I still haven't mastered the chat function a year and change in, but I'll do my best. Well, without hearing anybody, I will jump into one question that I got, Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth, which is about the special session. And we've heard a lot on that. We believe we're going to have a special session on redistricting. And the question is, are you going to talk about prisons and the lottery in any upcoming special session?
Yeah, so we'll definitely have a special session, probably looking at like a September, October timeline, more than likely October, dealing with redistricting. And by the way, we got a huge win, right, with the census and being able to hold all 7 congressional seats. And that was a huge team effort. All the Military Stability Foundation put a lot of money into making sure that we got our military families counted, but that was a great team effort. Governor Ivey, all kind of leaders across the state, well done. As far as, prisons, I think we'll definitely have a special session on prisons. Looks like the privatization plan, in my opinion, is not going to pan out. Personally, I think the the best plan on that would be for the state to build them and own them. And that just goes back to my business background. If I was going to pay for something for 30 years, I'd like to own the asset at the end of 30 years. And I think that's probably the right fiscal thing to do for the state. Certainly respect the governor and what she's trying to do. And I've been silent on that issue. But I mean, as far as my position, I do think that's in the best interest of the state. And I think you'll see the legislature, the governor's office, certainly work together and come up with a plan and something that we've got to address. And then I think it also can be done. The cost to build right now is really high. So it's a terrible time to build, just to be honest. But also think that there's some areas that potentially we can get the cost down. And I think when you look at the state potentially bonding that versus a private entity, I think we can get a lower interest rate. So this is a good time to borrow money with the interest rate side. Did you ask about the gambling? Was that the other thing you asked about? Yeah. Is that right?
Lottery.
Lottery. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know the answer to that. That's the governor's call. I've heard different things on that. I think if there's a consensus that could be done, it's possible, but I don't have any great insight into that just because that issue keeps moving.
Yep, understood. Well, thanks for that. Anyone else have a question?
Mary Pat, I have a question if I may.
Thanks, Daryl.
Governor, the last 2 fiscal years, both budgets have been record numbers each year. Does that trend continue? Do we kind of level off? How do you kind of procrastinate that? How do you procrastinate? Forgive me. How do you forecast that?
Yeah. Thanks, Daryl. Good to see you. I think the fact that, talking to my colleagues across the country, we were in a great spot. The fact that despite a pandemic, we had a surplus in both budgets, right? And ETF is income tax and sales tax. A general fund is made of a lot of different revenues. One of the things we did move is online sales tax there. And, you come by my house, you can see that we're supportive of that with all the boxes coming in. So that, Kindle orders. So it's certainly a good thing that we're collecting that revenue. But on the flip side, so I'll say this. Obviously you're asking me to predict what's going to happen in the future with the economy. I'm very bullish on Alabama. I'm very bullish on the next 1.5 to 2 years, based on some of the economists I've talked to. But I also think, there's some things out there that don't make a lot of sense just from a business standpoint. I mean, but I feel good about the next 1.5 to 2 years. I think the fact that we went through a pandemic and still had increased revenue, and we had 2 months that it was just, disastrous from a revenue standpoint, is really good. So, my projection for this year, we're gonna have a strong year. I think budgets will be up in the ETF and general fund. And, I feel great about that. I feel, at least for 2021, I feel great and that we're going to be in a better spot than we were the year before.
Thank you. Mary Pat, might I do a follow-up? One more question.
You may.
You mentioned our.
I think you're muted, Daryl. I can't hear you right now.
I have not mastered unmute yet.
Yeah.
You mentioned Danny Garrett. As someone who works for the Jefferson County delegation, we've been very proud of the work that both Danny Garrett and Senator Roberts have done on essentially tax reform. Talk about where you see that going. How does it affect the state from a good way, and what's going to happen next? Yeah,
so now, I mean, if we asked Senator Roberts, he could get way down in the weeds on this issue, and it would be, but fortunately I have good accountants and they handle tax stuff. But I'll say this, basically what we're trying to do on that is make it where, give incentives and benefits to Alabama-based businesses, where in the past it made more sense in some situations for people to be out of the state. There was some tax issues that weren't fair. I know we worked with some companies on here. And so, our goal is simple: to make it where companies want to locate here. Companies that are already here, we want to incentivize you to stay here. And they put a ton of work and effort and energy into doing that, and been very successful. And we're fortunate to have 2 of those guys. I mean, that's their passion. They love it. And, it's great to have them here. Like I said, I mean, to me, Representative Garrett's the best numbers guys down here. I mean, he's great with numbers, very sharp, and he loves these issues and diving in the weeds. And Senator Roberts has just dove into it, loves it. And he's got a lot of other ideas on tax policy, what we can do to make Alabama more competitive. And it's going to matter, because you look at the future, a lot of the states that surround us, if you don't have to pay income tax, that's a huge advantage. I mean, and so, we've got to be competitive. We got to continue to come up with ways to make sure Alabama is competitive. And, that's kind of what they've been looking at. And some of the things we passed this year that's been good. So.
Governor, if I may, I'd like to shift to more of a personal question. I've been a practitioner of politics in the state for about 30 years. I have very seldom seen someone have such a, let's call it a meteoric rise into leadership. What was your thought process from 2014 to go from the House to Lieutenant Governor, and talk about that process, if you will, and what made you do that?
Yeah, so thanks. So I never had a desire to be in politics. I was at Auburn. I was not involved in SGA. I was in a fraternity. I guess managed to do a few stupid things like steal a tiger. But outside of that, my focus was I worked while I was in school because I remember CEO Chick-fil-A and Delta came and said, "Hey, we'd rather hire someone that was, working and going to school." So I ended up working, last 2.5 years of school after I heard that at Bancorp South. Started off as a teller and ended up selling more checking accounts than anybody in the whole company, and winning, from that, winning all kind of trips. But my goal was prepare myself to, go in the real world and get a job when I got out. Got in and started my own businesses, did that, and got involved kind of in the legislative process through one of our outdoor industries called, we actually raised whitetail deer, and we started an Alabama Deer Association. We're one of Steve Wyndham's first clients back after he lost the governor's race to Riley. I was right out of school, led that. I just did all that stuff for free, ran an association, and it basically just benefited and lobbied for our industry we were in. So got to know a lot of people, supported a lot of candidates, did a lot of stuff like that. Still had no desire to run. Speaker Hubbard at the time called me and asked if I would consider running for the House. There was an open seat. A guy named Jeff McLaughlin, that was one of the most liberal lawyers at the time, was going to run for that seat again. Wes Long was not going to run. And I told the speaker, "Hey, appreciate it, flattered, but no thank you." And and then ended up deciding, after Kendall and I talked about it, to get involved. Served in the House and realized that the House was great. I didn't really like being one of 105, just to be totally honest. And just the ability to move the needle there, is a little bit different from, what I was used to in running my own businesses, solving problems, getting things fixed. And so I said, I'm even going to move up where I can make more of a difference or get out and go back to supporting good people. And so that's how, I decided to run for lieutenant governor. At the time, I was an underdog. Our first poll, we were 6%. But we put together a really good team, had a good plan. And, we felt that an outsider's message, talking about issues. I mean, most of the issues we talk about are issues that are going to make people's lives better. My kids go to public schools. I'm a big supporter of trying to improve our public schools. I want to make our state the best it can be and try to keep our kids here where they're not having to move to Austin or Dallas or, Nashville, and try to improve our cities. And so, I think when you look at the aerospace military stuff, and so that's the things we've kind of talked about. And I guess I was fortunate it resonated with people, and, I was fortunate I had enough my personal money to put in to kind of offset some of the support, I didn't have, just from not being as well known. And so, I got lucky and won the race. So that's, and then, been honored to serve. And, that's kind of, I guess, real quick how I got to where I'm at.
Great story, Governor. I don't want folks to think I started my first hour on you. So if someone else has another question, Mary Pat, I'd be glad to stop for you and listen.
Well, no, Daryl, I wouldn't recognize you if you're going to start your first hour. So I'd have to go to somebody else. So maybe Senator Wagner there.
Yeah. Mary, I've got one if you have a minute.
Yeah, please.
Governor Bruce Sheila, I've had the privilege of working for your dad many years ago as a tax lawyer. The R&D tax credit that Danny Garrett sponsored this year and has been one of the top items on the BBA's agenda for years, didn't make it again this year, unless it made last night and I missed it. What are your prognostications for that bill in the future?
Yeah, so there's a few people that don't like that bill. I'm a supporter of it. Think that we need to do it. It's interesting. I've always viewed tax credits and it incentivizes people to invest in Alabama and incentivizes growth. And there's a different mindset on that, honestly, with some people. They view it as, corporate welfare or handouts. I don't view it that way at all. I view it as like, that honestly that right now with corporations, with businesses, I mean, we have to be competitive, and I want to try to be very aggressive in making sure we keep the companies here that are, that are in Alabama, help them figure out how they can expand, incentivize them to do that, and also attract new businesses here. And so I think what we've got to do is a better job of messaging that to, all the members, because there's some members that just unfortunately view it as, corporate welfare, or unfair benefits to larger corporations. That's just not the case. So we got to do a better job of education.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. I do have a couple more questions that have come in, and unless anybody wants to ask one directly, if you do, just speak up and let me know. But everyone's favorite issue, the mask. We've got a question saying, could you clarify the governor's decision to lift the mask ordinance and the impact it may have on businesses reopening?
Yeah. So first, I was appreciative of the governor doing that. I think as far as the business, situation, obviously, different challenges there. We tried to make sure we've taken the liability off. I think with the CDC coming out saying if you've had a vaccine that you don't have to wear a mask, that's certainly helpful from a liability standpoint. I've got the vaccine. My wife got the vaccine. I got Pfizer. She got Moderna. I mean, we were fine, and we both had COVID as well as our kids. I mean, so I think hopefully I ought to be pretty tough against getting COVID. But I'll say this, I mean, it's a real issue. It's serious. It's certainly, we lost way too many people from it. So, I mean, businesses need to do, what they need to do to protect, their employees, do what's best for, your situation the best, the working situation. And, we're not going to get involved in that, right? I mean, that's what each business needs to decide to do. But from a state standpoint, there's certainly a lot of situations where it makes no sense to wear a mask, right? I mean, but I'm really encouraged that the vaccines are working, and that, what we need to do is collectively try to work together to figure out how do we get everybody vaccinated. And I'm not trying to push vaccines on people, but I'm also just trying to use common sense, and it works. And, and so, I think we're in a great spot. And, I'm encouraged the fact that, we're starting to have concerts again and ball games, and that's so encouraging. I can't wait to get back. I've already been out doing it, but I'm going to continue to do that. And I think from a business standpoint, my advice is do what's best for your business, and and your employees, to protect them.
That's great, very helpful. And I agree. As somebody who goes to a lot of kids sporting events myself, I was very happy not to have to wear a mask.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, just a couple more, and you mentioned this in your opening comments, but the question is, are we going to be able to better fund our pre-K program so that it reaches more students? And I know that's a high priority for you, but we just appreciate you elaborating on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the answer is yes on that. We're going to continue to do that. Gina Ross, which another great Marshall County lady that I've known since I was a kid. I mean, she really set up our program for our state to be successful long term. And I think she's doing some stuff with Harvard and other places now, and other states are trying to emulate what happened here. But we're really, other states look at what we do on pre-K. And so every year we continue to add money, add classrooms, allow more kids. And I'm all for that. I mean, I think that's something we've got to do. And when you look at the results from it, we're going to see that in graduation rates and, prison population going down. And I'm encouraged by, what we're doing there, and a huge supporter, continue to put more money into that for a lot of reasons, right, Mary Pat? Like, to think about just the childcare issue that helps for like just women in the workplace, right? I mean, and or males too, but just not to have to, if you can do that, if we can afford it as a state, it kind of, from a business standpoint, it helps y'all in a lot of ways as well.
Totally agree. Thank you. Well, I've got one more, and it relates to medical marijuana. So the question is, since the bill passed, what will the dispensing process be?
All right. So that is something that has to be defined by the commission. So the way that's going to work is Representative Faulkner had two amendments on there that directly tie into that. First is that the county commission, has the ability to approve or not approve a site in the county, and then the cities the same way from the dispensing standpoint. They have the ability to approve or not approve, and so you got kind of two checks and balances there, with the counties and the cities deciding where or if they want these, and then the commission will decide that. It's actually not in the bill.
Got it. Thank you for that. It's very helpful. And I did just see one more come in that says, do you have an idea where the American Rescue Plan state funding will be applied?
Yeah, so that's one of the things too that could be, if I understood right, I think we have till 2024 to spend the money, but I think on that is something we might have a special session on, and the legislature is going to be involved in appropriating the funds. At least in my conversation with the governor, I think they're going to actually get the legislature involved in that and allocating that money. And so that could be part of a special session you see, or a special session in of itself just on that issue. So.
Got it. Okay. Well, that's great. Thanks for spending so much time with us and for answering all these different types of questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. Congrats again on a very successful legislative session. Thanks for all you do for Birmingham and for the state of Alabama. I hope to see you soon. And just thanks very much.
Yep. Thanks. Y'all have a great day. Appreciate it, Mayor Pat. If I can help you any way, let us know.
Will do. Thanks so much.
Yep. Thanks.
All right, everybody. We do have a couple of announcements. I'm going to turn it over to Daryl to make a couple of housekeeping announcements. Thanks, everybody, for joining today.
Thank you, Mayor Pat. Just a couple of wrap-up things. Next month, June 21st, Nick Sellers from the World Games will be our speaker. We've had about 6 months of straight legislative issues. We figured we'd shift course a little bit. Most of us have probably heard Nick at least once or twice, but it changes so much that if you not talk to him in 2 weeks, it's a whole new ball game going on, literally. So we're quite excited to have Nick available next month. And we've also decided, I think for the sake of everybody's health and welfare, no July and August meetings. So when we come back in September, we'll start working on the agenda for next session, next year. So Nick Sellers next month, and no July and August meetings. And you'll get an update, obviously, but June 21st is the Nick Sellers day. Thank you, Mayor Pat. That's all I have.
All right, great. So we'll see everyone back on June 21st with Nick Sellers. And unless anybody else has an announcement or comment they want to make, appreciate y'all dialing in. Hope everybody has a great rest of your week. And we'll see y'all in June. Thanks, guys.